The other day, Frank DeFord died, one of the most famous sports writers in American history. I only met DeFord once. He's sort of a dapper guy. Somebody once wrote he looked like a movie star, like the Cary Grant, Gary Cooper thing, playing a sports writer. I'm not really here to talk about DeFord, but I am going to talk about how there are a number of writers, for those of us of a certain age, who were our Frank DeFords, or people that influenced us. I mean, growing up in Cleveland. You know, what did Hal Lebowitz have to say? Ask Hal. What does Hal have to say? Hal Lebowitz has probably been a mentor to me. Not that he gave a ton of advice. More I looked at how he handled things. I remember I was a rookie baseball writer in 1980 at the Plain Dealer, and Hal walks over to my desk and he says, "Terry, there's no such thing as a road trip. The team is either on the road or on a trip. You don't need road trip." I have never written that phrase, road trip, since. In fact, when I start to say it, I hear Hal's voice in my head. There's no such thing as a road trip. Hal was a wonderful writer going back to the old Cleveland News. Hal Ghost wrote a biography with Satchel Paige. But there were so many others. You know, Chuck Heaton, a wonderful gentleman, kind of Mr. Cleveland Brown. He was a big influence on me, just how well he treated other people. Danny Coghlan, a very funny writer, was very embracing of me when I was a young writer. I first met Danny Coghlan when I was still at Cleveland State, and I was working part-time as a Cleveland Cobras soccer team. They had an outdoor soccer team, and I was helping out in the press box there, and I got to know Danny Coghlan and Tim Rogers. Tim Rogers at the press, and then later he worked at the Plain Dealer. In fact, Tim Rogers helped me get a job at the Cleveland Press, the old Cleveland Press, answering the phones. You know, Tim Rogers was a wonderful high school writer. There I met Bert Grafe, became a longtime friend. He worked at the Press and later the Plain Dealer. And you go back, my father loved Gordon Cobbledick, who wrote for the Plain Dealer. In fact, Gordon Cobbledick wrote the book Don't Knock the Rock with Rocky Colavito. So he was one. Some people go all the way back to Ed Bang, one of the more interesting writers. And you can still find his book around. It's called just simply The Cleveland Indians, by a guy named Whitey Lewis. And it's the story of the Indians from like 1900 through 1949. And it's just called Cleveland Indians by Whitey Lewis. I remember I asked Hal about Whitey Lewis. Of course, they were on competing papers. And Hal said, yeah, you know, Lewis was one of those psychological guys. He was always putting the players on the couch and psychoanalyzing them. And we forget now because newspapers have changed so much. But if you go back to the 30s and 40s, early 50s, when there was the Cleveland Press, the Cleveland News, and the Plain Dealer, and these guys out on the beat, they were really knocking heads trying to get stories and so on. So, you know, I thought about DeFord, but then I thought, well, who were the writers around here, at least to me, that meant so much? And it's a pretty long honor roll of a lot of really good guys.